who's Managing Director of Jamboree and an expert on higher education. Vineet has been involved with the cause of higher education in India for the last 15 years and is founder and trustee of Ashoka University as well as Blacksha University. After graduating in mechanical engineering from IIT Delhi, Vineet, over the last 20 years, has been involved with helping students apply to universities abroad and secure scholarships. Vineet is deeply committed to his students, and because he believes that a good education has the power to transform lives. So Vineet is going to talk a little bit about the specifics of the various popular study abroad destinations and whether you should consider pursuing your undergraduate degree in India or elsewhere. He's also going to talk a little bit about the different kinds of education systems. As you guys probably already know, the education system is very different in the US, for example, compared to India. So he's just going to walk you through some of the major differences. And then lastly, he's going to talk about various financing options that you guys can consider and how you can financially plan your education. Or I'm seeing a lot of parents here, so yeah. Then after Vineet, I'm going to come and spend a couple of minutes really unpacking what it is that universities and admissions counselors are looking for. So an application consists of many different elements, and I'm going to go through these various elements with you and really think about what makes a good application and how you can start working towards that, towards enhancing your profile and putting your best foot forward, basically. And after I'm done, we're going to have one of our verbal faculty members, Shreya, who's going to give you a broad overview of the SAT, some preparation strategies that you can use, what's the best time to give it, how to get started, and then she's going to walk you through a couple of sample questions so that you get a good feel of what the exam is like. And after that, we will open the floor. We're going to start with the student panel discussion. So by then you guys will probably be tired of hearing a lot of information about this and that. So it'll be good to hear from the students themselves about their journeys, their experiences, and how they navigated this process. And after that, the floor will be open for all kinds of questions. So don't worry if something that if you have a question and it isn't answered while all of us are talking, you will have time at the end and you can ask all your questions then. So that's how it's going to be for today. And with that, let's begin. I'm going to invite on stage Vineet. So if we can have a round of applause for him, please.
Thank you, Naima, and welcome parents and students to Jamboree seminar. While they fix the presentation and I get going with it, a little bit about Jamboree. We are a company that started in 1995. So we've been there for the last 27 years. We are in 36 locations across the country, many locations in Delhi, Noida, Gurgaon, Greater Noida, Faridabad. So we cover pretty much the entire NCR. Other than that, we're present in cities all over the country. So we're one of the oldest institutes for preparation for the SAT. We also counsel students. We help with applications. We help them get into top universities abroad. Naima went through the Jamboree process in 2017. She's also been a student of Delhi Public School, RK Puram. And there are many people like her who went through Jamboree and pursued their undergraduate education at top colleges. So let me start by really, when I went to college, of course, very few people went abroad for an undergrad education. And education abroad is costly, there's no doubt, right? And we can get into financing and how much it costs a little later. But this slide, if you can see, we have two sort of screens on both sides, and maybe the font is a little smaller, but I can read out. This is pretty much the landscape of higher education abroad today, right? Most Indian students are going to these countries The top 4 by preference are US, Canada, United Kingdom and Australia, right? These are the 4 countries where a large number of Indian students go, perhaps 90-95%. And then few go to, there are people who started going to France, there are people, Netherlands is coming up as a great destination. Germany, the education in the public universities in Germany is free, so that is emerging as a destination. Ireland, we've seen emerge as a destination lately. Italy, in fact, one of the Jamboree team members, Rahul, did his engineering from Italy and he's going to be on the panel. He also has deep knowledge on European colleges. India has changed a lot too. Universities like Ashoka, Kriya, Plaksha, Shivnadar, none of them were present before 2010. So a lot of this high quality private university, this emergence, private higher education has been there in India for a long time, perhaps for the last 30-40 years. And we've had the likes of a BITS Pilani or some outstanding institutions. But really, if you see in terms of volume, in terms of coverage of courses, Ashoka is broad liberal arts, Kriya is again broad liberal arts, Jindal does extremely well on law. The IIMs today have undergraduate programs. IIM Indore has an integrated 5-year program. IIM Ranchi has a program. Shivnadar, Mahindra are technology institutions. Plaksha is emerging as a top technology university in the country. So I think the emergence of high quality private institutions in India is also a recent phenomenon. This is a phenomenon of the last 10-12 years. And many are very, very open. Their admissions criteria are very similar to the way US universities recruit. So if you're writing the SAT and if you're preparing your profile, what applies to the US will also apply to a lot of these colleges. So we've listed some of them down. Singapore is also emerged as a destination in the last 20 years. Singapore universities, NUS and NTU, the National University of Singapore and Nanyang, they feature, one is ranked number 11 in the world and NTU is ranked number 12. So they are 11 and 12 in world rankings. This is also something that has happened in the last 20 years. So top universities in Singapore, they become extremely difficult to get in. There's tremendous competition. Australia, as I mentioned, is another big destination. University of Melbourne, Sydney, Monash University, Australian National University. New Zealand is not that big a destination, but still some students end up there. But as I mentioned, the bulk of Indian students are going to US, Canada, UK and Australia. Australia had been a little closed for the last 3 years. No guessing why. Australia shut its borders due to COVID. But they are opening up now. United Kingdom has, after Brexit, the UK really wants to make its own standing in the world. They become extremely flexible. So UK is recruiting students with a vengeance, right? So if you really look before 1960, if you look at India's independence and pretty much that time, top scholars from India went to the United Kingdom. Oxford, Cambridge, these were probably the 2 top universities Indian scholars went to. That changed after 1960s, 70s. Top scholars from India today are going to the US. Harvard, Yale, Stanford, Princeton. I mean, the number of top universities in the US is just huge. So US dominates the higher education landscape. So that's the overall landscape. We can talk a lot about each country. I'm going to give you some points. Largely, Canada has great job opportunities. It has very friendly PR policies. PR means permanent residency. So if you're looking to settle abroad, Canada is a great country. After 3 years, you can pretty much get your PR. Very high quality education, right? But Canada has about 40 universities, out of which 8-10 are high quality. And admissions to Canadian universities lays a lot of emphasis on academics, right? So they don't look at SAT scores. They're very focused on your 10th grade marks, 11th grade, 12th grade, right? If we look at UK and Europe, UK of course is a very popular study destination. It's made its visa guidelines, work visa guidelines very flexible. So everybody who studies in UK gets a 3-year work visa now, which was not the case before Brexit. There are colleges for all students. So no matter where you figure, whether you're 60%, 70%, 90%, everybody gets admission to a UK college. The Netherlands is France and Germany. They are emerging as great destinations. They are opening up tremendously. largely because they are starting courses, undergraduate degrees in English. Otherwise, language was a big problem in mainland Europe. Scholarships are few in Europe, right? Whether it's mainland Europe or UK, but the advantage with mainland Europe is it's a lot of state-run universities, so they're economical. Germany is practically free. But one challenge UK does experience tremendously is their very, very limited job opportunities. UK is a very small country and limited job opportunities compared to a US or a Canada. Singapore, very economical, close to India, again very, very friendly on PR. 3 large universities, NUS, NTU and SUTD, the Singapore University of Technology and Design. So it's very difficult to get in. So it's as difficult to get in as a St. Stephen's. So you need a 97, 98, 99%, right? A lot of people applying from India. There are not many seats. So very difficult for admission. You can't really put all your eggs in the Singapore basket. If you're applying to Singapore, you also have to apply elsewhere. And then lastly, Australia, New Zealand, friendly PR, very expansive. The Australian higher education system is huge. So again, small population, but many universities, limited scholarships, limited job opportunities. Australia traditionally has been extremely strong on vocational training, tourism, or those kind of courses. Australia has been very popular. Not to say it doesn't have top universities. University of Melbourne, Australian national universities are also top research institutions. But last 3-4 years, it's been a little closed. Hong Kong had emerged as a great destination in the middle, but there's a lot of unrest going on for the last 4 years. So I won't advise anybody to go to Hong Kong right now. Indian colleges I already spoke of, Ashoka, Kriya, Plain, Narsi Munji. Narsi Munji is very good for if you're looking to do undergraduate education in business. Laksha emerging as a great destination for technology. IIM Indore, IIM Rohtak have integrated 5-year programs, undergrad plus postgrad, right? Again, very competitive. I'm happy to answer any questions on Indian universities, how you get in. I've myself been deeply involved with the founding of Ashoka and Laksha, so these are institutions I'm very close to, but I'm also very aware of other institutions on this list. Let me spend a couple of minutes on the US because and the reason I'm saying that is because US has a large number of top quality institutions. If you look at top 100 rankings on any matrix, whether it's the Times Higher Education ranking or it's the QS ranking, you'll find that 50 out of 100 top institutions in the world are from the United States. I sometimes give this example that in the 1920s, the GDP of Argentina and US was similar, right? Both countries had similar GDP. We are in 2020, 100 years later. You don't have to guess which countries progress more. And I think, and there's documented research now that the reason US progressed so much economically is because of its high quality higher education system. You look at the top 10 companies in the world by market cap, 8 or 9 are in the US. You look at most innovation coming out of a country, whether it's an Apple or a Google or a Facebook or a Microsoft, you find that most of it is coming out of the United States. So a lot of premium on research, a lot of premium on technology, a lot of premium on innovation. So no wonder US sort of dominates the world scene in higher education. And I continue to find that some of our top students find US the most attractive. I also had the pleasure to study at TPS RK-Puram long back. This was almost 30 years ago. And I remember when I was studying, most of my class used to write the joint entrance exam and would want to get into the IITs. Now when I go to TPS RK-Puram into some of their best sections, I find that most of their top students want to go to the US, to top colleges, right? So that's changed very, very significantly. Opportunities have opened up, families can afford more. The US education, the undergrad degree is a 4-year degree, unlike India where engineering is 4 years, medicine is 4 years, but all other degrees, economics, history, literature are 3 years, right? United Kingdom degrees are 3 years. Canada is also 4 years. Singapore is 4 years. But most of Europe, UK is all 3 years. India is 3 years, of course. UK, all undergraduate degrees are 4-year duration. But there is duration flexibility, meaning you can finish your degree in 3 years, 3.5, 4. You can even take 5 years, 5.5 years. So you can, gap years are common. doing more credits is common. So it's a fairly flexible. There is duration flexibility. There's also course flexibility. Unlike India and unlike the United Kingdom, we inherited our higher education system from the United Kingdom. When we join college, we also join a BA Honours Economics, or we join a BA BSc in Physics or a BSc in Chemistry. And that's why when students come to us and say, which course can I apply to in the US, that question in some sense is meaningless. Because in the US, you can pretty much join a college undecided, right? You can really, you may be totally confused what you want to do. Of course, you can't do engineering if you've not done math in 11th and 12th, right? But if you've done the required courses in 11th and 12th as a prerequisite, you can pretty much join a college undecided. And then you figure out, at the end of 1 year, at the end of 3 semesters, you figure out what is it that you want to really major in. They call it major, right? Whatever. Whether you want to do economics or literature, Naima changed her stream twice while she was studying, and there are many such students like her. So there's tremendous course flexibility, right? In my experience of dealing with students, not only at Jamboree but also Ashoka, Plaksha, I find students are often confused. They're often wondering, should I do math? Should I do engineering? Should I do computer science? Some people wonder, should I do economics? Should I do psychology? So if you're applying to the US, you don't have to worry about those questions. You can decide that after a year, after 3 semesters. And lastly, the academic system is it's continuous evaluation. There is you do not score just on one exam. You pretty much assess the semester, and there's flexibility. You can do more credits, you can do less credits, you can do credits in the summer. The academic system is very, very rigorous, right? Unlike a lot of colleges, I see, particularly in India, students tend to study more towards their exams and do very well in exams. The US does require you to study throughout. We've covered that, so I'm not going to talk too much about it, but there as radical shift. Shubham applied for BBA and shifted to mechanical engineering, right? Imagine the shift. Richa, she applied undecided and chose marketing. Naveen majored in computer science and psychology. So that's the other thing. You can also club two majors together. Kavita majored in engineering and film studies. So, see the contrast. Engineering and film studies. Those are the sort of contrasts you see. And, students have those interests. Duration flexibility we've spoken of, so I'm going to skip it. Academics, continuous evaluation, practical learning, credits through internships. Co-ops is another interesting term. Co-ops, many colleges in the US have co-ops, which means you can take 5 years to your degree, and out of that 5 years you can work for a year, or you can work for a year and a half with a company, and while you're working you are paid, right? And you can also carry on and do your masters or even PhD. The US universities also allow you to do a PhD right after undergrad, so you don't need to do a master. It's not BA, MA, MPhil, PhD. You do a bachelor's and you can straight away do a PhD. Types of universities. So US is a mecca for higher education, as I mentioned, 4,000 colleges for undergrad, colleges and universities. So everybody gets in, no matter what your score is. There are universities for somebody who scored 50%, 60, 70, 80, 90, so everybody gets in. Of course, the higher you score, the better universities you get in. And largely we bucket US universities in 4 categories. They are top private universities, Harvard, MIT, Yale, Stanford, Penn. They are all private universities. I'm sure you heard their names. UC Berkeley, UCLA, Michigan Ann Arbor, UT Austin. These are all public universities. They are also top end, top notch. So whether it's public or private, both are highly ranked. Top private are slightly more expensive. The public ones are slightly cheaper. The top private gives scholarships. Top public will not give any scholarships, right? So that's also the anomaly. Then you have sort of mid-end private, mid-end public. So the list is very long, but we've sort of put some universities here for reference. Course options are, you can pretty much do whatever you think of, so I'm not going to read through this list, but engineering, whether you want to do something in business, in the sciences, and humanities. So everything is open. You can mix and match anything from one bucket with another. Of course, if you want to do engineering, you need to have done physics and math in your 11th and 12th, right? If you want to do economics, some colleges may ask for math, right? Although it's not a prerequisite. Naima tells me no, so you can probably do economics without math. So I think other than a couple of these concerns, you can pretty much go and decide it and shift your major, your degree. You can combine, you can do a major and a minor, you can combine options, etc. How do you fund your education abroad? An education abroad, the range is massive, right? A Singapore degree, a 4-year degree could be as little as maybe 10 lakhs a year or something, right? The most expensive US degree could be as large, as high as 60 lakhs a year, right? So that's pretty much the range. So it goes right from 7, 8, 10 lakhs to 60 lakhs a year, depending on which university you are picking. Okay, and everything else is in the middle. Ireland, UK are in the middle. Canada is maybe 20% cheaper than the US, but US itself has a wide range, right? The top Harvard, Yale, Princeton would be at the top end of expenditure, but also extremely liberal on scholarships. But there are many universities which are at a 10 lakh, 12 lakh, 15 lakh price point. How do you fund yourself? There are loans. Indian banks give loans. There are some international organizations which give loans now. The second is scholarships. You'll be amazed how many scholarships the US universities give. There are some scholarships in the UK. Mainland Europe is pretty economical. Rahul can answer some of those questions on mainland Europe. He did his engineering in Italy, largely free of cost. So Europe has some economical options. A degree in Netherlands could be 30-35 lakhs for a 4-year degree. So a lot of need-based and merit-based scholarships. For many students who really think that funding is a concern, believe me that if you are open and flexible on choice of colleges, and if we are still sticking to good quality colleges, you can get even up to 100% scholarship. If you work hard, get good scores. There are many students who've gone abroad on 100% scholarships, right? So that is possible. Scholarships are both need-based and merit-based. Need-based means scholarships are given based on parental income. Most top universities do that. Harvard, Yale, Princeton will first admit you, then give you scholarship based on parental income, right? They are need-based. They also use a term called need blind, you must have heard of, right? So I can go into the detail of the term, but it's really need-based scholarships, right? They're admitting you on merit, but giving scholarship based on need. And then many universities are giving merit-based scholarships. And then work study. You can work while you are studying, right? You can at least cover your living cost, maybe some part of food cost, your rental. If you work a lot during summer, you can maybe cover a little part of your tuition. Okay? So those are, of course, your family is your biggest support always, but other than the family, these are some options to study abroad. I think I've taken a lot of time, so I'm going to conclude. Jamboree, of course, does a lot of SAT coaching through our centers, and Shreya will talk a little bit about SAT and what we do. But what we also do is we do a lot of admissions counseling for students. So we handhold students. Students come to us sometimes in grade 9, sometimes in grade 10, sometimes in grade 11 or grade 12. And I think our question to parents and students is that, look, or our promise to parents and students is, look, you don't worry about your undergraduate education, whether in India or abroad. Leave that worry to us, whether it's testing, whether it's profile building. So pretty much at every step of the way, roadmap, resume, SOP, essays, universities, letters of recommendation, reviews. So we take care end to end, pretty much till the time that you take your visa and fly abroad, right? We call that the Dream College program. More information on that is available. I am here We have various Jamboree team members. They may be wearing the Jamboree badge. You can speak to any of us after the seminar in case you are interested in any of our programs. The Jamboree team also has a special offer for people who join today. There are some discounts on that. You can check that from the desk. So I'll end my presentation here. There's lots we can talk about, but time is always limited. So, but I'm available here to answer questions during the panel discussion. So thank you very much for being here.
Okay, so I know I said I'm going to talk about what colleges look for, and I'm going to get to that in a minute. But before that, I just want to add a little bit to what Vineet said. And, so we've been talking about financing your education. We've been talking about quality of education. In some ways, a lot of people consider education to be an investment, right? An investment in your future. And now I hesitate to think of education, at least my education, as an investment because it sounds too monetary for me, right? So what I would ask all of you, what do you expect from college, right? Because I get a lot of students and they're applying, they want to, get into Harvard, MIT, or they have these expectations of getting into college, but they really haven't thought about what happens once you do get in, right? So the application process, I remind all of you, is just the first step. It's the beginning to actually starting college life. And I think at this moment, it's important for everybody to think about why you want to study abroad, why are you applying, and what do you expect from your college experience, right? It can't just be that I'll get a good job after that. That's important, yes, but it's 4 years of your life, or 3. So I think thinking about why you want to go to college and what your expectations are is extremely important. And that kind of brings me to what colleges are looking for, right? Colleges don't want to admit students so that they can leave and have great jobs. That's not the only reason they're doing it. They're doing it because they have created a community that they want students to contribute to. So it's always a give and take. And I think we as students, when we're applying, we're thinking very much in terms of, do I have the right score? Do I meet this benchmark? Do I meet that benchmark? But we also have to think that what value do we as an individual add to a college campus? And at the end of the day, I think that's the crux of it. You could have the best SAT score, but if you're not going to be a value add to the college community, then the college isn't interested in taking you. But that, of course, that does not mean that a score alone is enough, or that if you don't get a perfect score, it's the end of the world. There are many more parts to your application, right? And with that, I move on to your academic record. Now, the academic record, at least for US colleges, they ask you your grades for 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th. So they don't just want to see if you, and I think this is difficult to grasp sometimes because in India, when we are applying to colleges, when you're giving your board exams, it's only your board exam marks that matter. And so it's about how you do in those last couple of months. But US colleges, as Vineet already said, it's more about consistency, right? So it's not just working during exam time. They want to see that you have taken your education seriously for 4 years or continuously, right? So let's say you only do well in your 11th finals because you decided to apply to college, but you haven't done that well before. So from the university perspective, it feels like you've not taken your education seriously till now. You just waited till exam time and then you kind of scrambled. So I think it's important to show that consistency. Of course, things go wrong. Sometimes the good part is that if you don't do well, you did do well in your 11th finals, you have your 12th half yearlies to make up for it, right? So the good part about a long duration is that you have multiple chances. Then we come on to extracurricular activities. So yes, academics is the most important because like I said, you're going there for an education. That is your first responsibility. But they're not. So colleges are interested in people as a whole. Now you are not just your grades or your test score. You are much more than that, right? And so they want to see who you are outside the classroom. Now, particularly when you're applying to colleges abroad, it's not that you go to college and you come back. You're living in the university, right? So your university experience is both inside the classroom and outside the classroom. So it makes sense why they would be interested in your activities outside, right? So, and this could be anything. It could even be things that you do for fun. So it could be art, it could be sports, it could be, having a blog, it could be a podcast you started, music, basically anything. What are your hobbies? What do you do for fun? Things like that. And again, even here, colleges want to look for consistency. So it's better to do a few things and to do them well than to spread yourself very thin, like do 15 activities, but just kind of potter around, not going to depth. So, a lot of students come to me and they're like, should we do a research paper also? Should we start our own YouTube channel? And I'm like, if you want to, then do it, but don't do it only to check a box. And this is where it gets tricky. It's a fine balance between doing things to strengthen your application and doing things only for the sake of an application. Now, there are some things like the SAT, which you have to do only for the application process, right? It's a requirement. But there are other things, especially outside the classroom, that you should do because you're actually interested in them, because they mean something to you, right? Otherwise, why are you devoting time and energy doing that? So I think with extracurriculars, there might be things that you don't even consider to be an extracurricular activity that might end up being one. For example, I used to write a lot, and I used to write for myself for fun, and I used to just kind of upload it on this Tumblr type blog, which I'm sure nobody ever read. But when I was in about 11th grade, then I kind of realized that writing is something that I've done consistently, and I've done it for a while. So why is this not an extracurricular? Right? So things that you don't even consider to be quote unquote extracurricular activities or achievements can be. Right? So it's about how you like to engage with your community as in the classroom, then outside the classroom, your family, other spaces. So they want to see how you are in different kinds of environments. Then we have essays. How many of you have written an essay for a school assignment? Okay, some of you. How many of you would feel comfortable writing a 500-word essay? Okay, right. So writing is difficult, particularly for those who have gone through the CBSE system like I did. And it was even tougher when I reached college actually, because suddenly I had to write 20-page papers and I had no idea what to do. I had no idea how to begin a paper, how to end it, how to structure it. So I think writing is the one thing that we as Indian students are most deficient in, unfortunately. But I think the good part is that writing is something that you can develop, and just like anything else, it just requires a little bit of practice and it requires some reading. So essays are colleges, the common application, which is how you apply to various colleges. It's a single application portal, and you're going to fill it out, and then that's going to go to all the colleges. So most colleges ask you to give a personal statement of sorts. So it can be about a challenge that you faced and how you overcame it, about some aspect of your identity that is really important to you, or it can be about a meaningful experience that kind of changed your perspective. But basically, they want to hear a personal story, right? So they've gotten your test scores, they've gotten your marks, they've gotten your extracurricular activity list, they've got all of this data, but now they want to hear the human voice of who you are as an individual, who you are as a person, right? So one mistake that I think students make often is while writing their essays, they're trying to just copy paste their resume. Like I've done this, I've done that, but you've already written that. There is space in the application to talk about your achievements, to talk about what you've done. The essay space is there so that you can tell the colleges what they cannot find out from those statistics, right? So what is it that, and this is what I ask my students when we start brainstorming, what is it that you think is important for the colleges to know about you, right? And of course, and this is, I think essay writing, it's important for like friends and family to get involved, or at least to give it a second read, because these are the people who know you best. And so there will be things about yourself that you won't think of. This process also requires a lot of self-reflection at times, to think about what challenges you faced. I mean, when you're applying, you're only 17, right? So you're young, so it's a difficult kind of question to think about a challenge or a setback. But I think if you start thinking about it early, then your essay can really come through well. And at the end of the day, you have to remember it's a human being who's reading your application, right? So if they like you, they're going to tend towards taking you. So you don't have to seem impressive, you have to seem likable, you have to seem like someone they want on their college campus. So take your essay seriously is the point. Then we have letters of recommendation. Now, LORs, I'm guessing most of you know what they are, but LORs will be written by teachers, high school teachers who've known you well. So if you have teachers who've taught you, let's say, for more than a year, preferably, who know you really well, you should ask them. If you are clear on what kind of major you're going to apply for, so let's say if you're applying for math, and you're very clear about that, it would be odd if you didn't take an LOR from your math teacher. Does that kind of make sense? That you should try, your application is a story, it has to fit, right? So if you say that you love math and you love science and you don't like history, but you take your LOR from your history teacher, it's gonna not make sense. So you want it to make sense. And then I think most colleges also ask for a school counselor's recommendation. So with school counselors, they're always very overworked, and as the application season piles up, they have so many letters to write. So my advice there would be to get there early. Start asking them for LORs early before everybody comes in, and then they don't have time. So I would say, if you're in 12th, it's summer, just even before your summer vacations you can start, but definitely before October. I think October is when things kind of get crazy for teachers, especially if you go to a school in which a lot of people apply abroad. So I think that's basically some of the main elements about what your application will consist of. And now, at the risk of repeating myself, I want to say that US colleges in particular take a very holistic view at the application process, right? So think about it. Why is it that they're asking you to do all of these things, but they're also spending a lot of time and energy going through these applications? It's investment, time and money investment for them as well. So that kind of shows you how committed they are towards this holistic approach, right? So they're not just asking you to fill things because they wanted to make an application. They care about every single element. That's why it's there. On average, an admissions counselor spends 6 minutes per application, and so they have a huge volume to go through. But so use your space wisely, right? You have this, I don't know how, it's maybe like 5-6 pages. Use your space wisely. Now, before I kind of end and give the stage to Shreya, who's going to talk about the SAT and SAT preparation, I just want to take a couple of minutes to answer one question that I get a lot, and not just in terms of from students, but this is a question that I got a lot personally from friends and family and from people around me when I was applying to college. I was very clear that I wanted to go to the US, and the reason was because I liked the flexibility. I had no idea what I wanted to study, what I wanted to do, and I was not ready to commit to anything in 10th grade. Right? I wanted to explore. I had a lot of interest. I wanted to take classes in different things. I wanted to, be able to, I didn't want to rule out psychology before even taking a psychology class, right? So that was my main motivation, that I didn't want to decide early, and second, I wanted to explore. So the question that I got at that time was, why are you going for your undergrad to the US? Do your undergrad in India and then do your masters in the US, or do your MBA, whatever. But don't do your undergrad in India. And the other kind of thing was spend money, put all this effort in your application process. This is not really worth it. An MBA is worth it, or a master's is worth it. Now, for me, I think the question is, what do you mean by worth it? And this brings me back to what I started with. What do you expect from an education? What do you expect from your education? Is it just 3-4 years that are going to go by and then you're going to have a degree? It's not, right? I'm fresh out of college, freshly minted. And I can truly say that college was transformational for me. I'm not saying that go to the US, you're going to have an amazing experience. No, I'm saying irrespective of where you go, think of your college as more than just a degree. Think of it as 4 years of your life, 4 years where you're there to learn, you're there to meet new people, to make friends, to have good experiences, and to figure yourself out. For most of us, that's the first time we leave our homes or we venture out into a space. So right now, as you're starting your college application process, college is this abstract, vague idea. It is is it worth it? Is it not worth it? I think that depends on what you want it to be, right? So I think it's something that you cannot necessarily monetize. But if we do want to talk about that, I would say that I have a lot of friends who study in the US, who are also, most of my friends, I was supposed to graduate last year. I took 5 years. So they graduated last year and they're all working now. And many of them took student loans. Some of them got partial scholarships. But I can say this, that I don't think any of them necessarily regrets that they paid a lot more than they would have paid if they had studied in India. I don't think I've ever heard someone say that, I regret that college loan. Because you can work there and you kind of recover your costs very fast. So students directly to you, if you really want it, I think taking a loan and funding your college experience, it's totally doable. And you can get a job when you get there. I took a job when I reached college, and it pays pretty decently, So I think that if you really want it, you can make it work, and think long term, right? So broaden your view, think beyond just 3 years, degree, how much it matters, masters. Think about what you expect. And so with that spiel, I will give the stage to Shreya, who's going to talk about the SAT. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. So I'm here to discuss a few things about the SAT, right? How we can prepare and what all goes into the preparation. So let's start with that. So basically, if we talk about the SAT, it's majorly divided into two halves. So 50% of your test will test you on verbal, right, which is essentially the English part, and the rest of the 50% will test you on math, right? So basically, if we talk about it, the English part is divided into two halves further. So the reading section and the writing section, right? On the reading section, we are tested on 52 questions based on reading passages or unseen passages like we've been doing, right? All our lessons, class 5 or 6, we've always, had section 1 as the reading passages. So it's similar to that. It's just that the questions that we are tested on are a little different, right? As in, we will be tested more on inference-based questions or purpose-based questions, function-based questions. The rest of the English or verbal section is the writing and language part, right, which tests us on grammar and our efficiency in English. So over here, we'll be tested on 44 questions that are to be answered in 35 minutes. The math part as well is divided into two halves. One part is to be attempted without the calculator and the other part is to be attempted with the calculator. So we are allowed to use the calculator on one half of the math test. So all in all for math, we'll be tested on 20 plus 38, 58 questions in about 80 minutes. We are also scored separately for the verbal and the math section. So we are scored between 200 and 800 for verbal and between 200 and 800 for math as well. So all in all our final SAT score is between 400 and 1600. Now let's talk a little bit about how we should prepare, what should our study plan be like, right? So like anything else we study, we always need to start out with the basics, right? So step one is the basic concept building. We have to learn what all is tested on the SAT because it's not the same as what we've been doing in school. I mean the topics are the same, like we are tested on punctuation, we are tested on unseen passages, but the way in which the topics are tested are a little different. So we just need to go with the basic concept building first of all, followed by mastering the concept, right? What I mean by that is practicing more and more, practicing as much as possible. Like let's say for example, I'm a little weak at punctuation. Now I know the basics, but then I'll always have to, practice more. I'll have to practice individual topic-wise questions. So that's all about mastering the concept. Further, we'll have to practice for the SAT like the SAT tests us. Like in the writing section as well, we'll test it in the form of passages. So time management would be the next step, like for example, if I get 35 minutes in order to solve, let's say, 4 passages, I'll have to devote somewhere around 8 minutes per passage. I have to bring my timing down. The same applies for reading passages also, right? So if let's say I get 5 passages to be attempted in 65 minutes, right? So I'll have to, time myself at let's say somewhere around 12 minutes, right? So that I can perform well on the exam, I can manage my time well. So first we're going to practice time management, right? Topic wise questions, time management, then we'll go on and practice sectional tests. So sectional tests would be like you would practice one section of English, one section of writing, one section of reading, one section of maths, like that, which increases our mental agility, which increases our ability to absorb what is put in front of us and to perform there when we are on the exam. And the last step would be to attempt full length tests, right? Even with school exams, towards the end we tend to go through tests 3 hours at a time, so that we can build our endurance, because we are not used to sitting for a 3 or 4 hour exam at a stretch, answering so many questions, right? So mock testing would be the last phase, right? Lots of mock testing would help us achieve our desired goal of a good score. Now about the SAT preparation, right? What all we need to take care of while we are preparing for the SAT. So number one, we don't need to focus on grammar improvement. We don't need to focus on vocabulary improvement, because that is not what we are tested on. We are being tested on our logic, on our application of the language. So our focus should be dependent on that, right? Our SAT preparation should be focused only on the SAT and not on grammar improvement or on vocabulary improvement. Also, our preparation rests a lot on the kind of questions we practice. Let's say I end up practicing, 2,000 questions, 5,000 questions, 6,000 questions, or let's say 500 questions even, right? Practicing more does not necessarily mean practicing well, right? So our focus should be on the kind of questions we practice. Our questions should be SAT specific. The quality of the questions should match with the kind of questions that are actually put forward in front of us on the SAT. Also, along with that, maintaining an error log would go a long way. Like for example, let's say I've practiced 5 mock tests, but I've not really analyzed, how I performed there. What kind of questions did I get wrong? Maybe I'm getting just one kind of question wrong over and over again. Maybe it's a punctuation question, maybe it's a singular plural question, right? So if I do maintain an error log, it would help me realize what kind of errors I am making, and then I could work towards making myself better on that particular topic, right? So that's all about the SAT preparation. Now, like I spoke about the mock test earlier as well. So how should we take mock tests? We can get a hold of them, we can appear for mock tests, but how? What is the procedure? What should we take care of while we're appearing for the mock test? So number one, the mock should be taken in a proctored environment. So ideally, you should ensure that there's an invigilator, right? With students, I generally ask them to come down to the center. On weekends, we make out slots and we ask students to come down to the centers, and generally one of us or somebody from the center staff can take care of the invigilation. So ideally, that would be a really good thing if that is possible. Along with that, if you're not able to come down to the centers, or if you're not able to take the test in a proctored environment, another good thing to do would be not to take the test in a completely silent environment, because that's not something you're going to get on the day of the exam. You're going to probably appear for the exam in some school, and there are going to be other students, a lot of other students while you take the exam. So taking the exam in a silent environment and then going to all the way to a school and having so many people around, it can hinder your accuracy. So don't take the exam in a silent environment, right? And learning to focus in spite of disturbances would go a long way, right? Because you never know what kind of a student, would be sitting on the next desk or on the one behind you. Maybe they mumble, you won't be able to focus them. So taking care to concentrate in spite of disturbances helps a lot. The bare minimum you should try to practice is 8 to 12 mock tests, right? Because they would vary in difficulty. The test of difficulty, varying difficulty would help you figure out anything on the day of the exam. You would be ready for any kind of a situation, right? And generally the SAT is held in the mornings, right? So you have to report to the center by 8 a.m. So try to attempt at least 2 to 3 mock tests that are there right before the test. Let's say a test is in a week. So the last 2 or 3 tests that you take should ideally be taken at the same time that you're going to appear for the exam, right? That helps your body get in order, that helps your biological clock set up to the kind of time and the kind of frame you're going to be in at that time. So another thing we can take care of is the section-wise time limits. When we do appear for the test, right, when we are mock testing, it would make a lot of sense to stick to the section-wise time limits, take breaks in between. Let's say we are appearing for an almost 3-hour test, right? We have 4 sections: the reading, the writing, and the 2 math sections. Now, all in all, on the exam, we get a total of 2 breaks. The first break will be right after the reading section, right? So after that reading section, we get a 10-minute break. So ideally, the best way to go forward would be to take the reading section, take a 10-minute break, go for the writing and math sections back to back, take another 5-minute break, and then attempt the 55-minute second math section, right? So sticking to time limits would help us on the day of the exam again, right? Now let's talk a little bit about what kind of strategies we can follow. So we have the reading passages, reading section, the writing section, and the math section. So let's talk a little bit about each of them. So first of all, let's talk about the reading section. So on the reading section, we get a total of 5 passages, 52 questions to be attempted in 65 minutes. So the ideal thing would be that, okay, I get 10 or 11 questions based on a passage. So there's going to be 3 passages with 10 questions each, 2 passages with 11 questions each. So what we need to do is we need to time ourselves at 12 minutes per passage. So we need to target that I need to finish off each reading passage within 12 minutes, so that I do have some time to check my answers, to mark on the OMR sheet. So 12 minutes per reading passage is how we should time ourselves. We need to micromanage our time, right? Similarly, if we talk about writing passages, we are supposed to attempt a total of 44 questions in 35 minutes. And those 44 questions are based on 4 passages, which brings us to 11 questions per passage. So again, the ideal time you should take per writing passage when you're practicing is 8 minutes. So 8 minutes per passage for the writing passages. On math, it is really important to understand what the question is asking you. So go beyond the obvious, try to understand what the question is exactly saying. Now, let's talk about the strategy for writing passages. So number one, see, on writing passages, we are not being tested on our understanding of the passage, rather we are being tested on our hold of the language, right? On our logic, on our hold of the language. So we don't really need to read the passages. We just need to focus on the areas on which questions are based, right? So there are going to be certain underlying portions for that. So we don't need to read the passage, we don't really need to read the questions first. Rather, if we pay attention to the options, it is possible to identify what kind of a question it is. And then accordingly, we can go back into the passage, right? And our focus should not be on finding out the correct answer, rather our focus should be on eliminating the wrong ones. So that was all about the details of the SAT. I'll be there on the panel if anybody has any further questions. Naima, please take over. Thank you, everybody.
Now the second half of this is really going to be more interactive, more conversational. We have 3 students, 3 Jamboree students and me. And I think the 3 students are all just going to go to college this year. They prepared for their SAT with us, and I think some of them also we also helped them with admissions counseling. So you're really going to get to hear about each student's personal decision-making process, how they prepared for the SAT, how they decided which colleges to apply to, what motivated them to do it in the first place, and so on, right? And any tips, of course, that they might have. So let me just kind of get started, and I'm going to, as I take your name, if you could please come up on stage, that would be great. So we have Kshitij. And please give them a round of applause because they're taking out their time to come here and talk to you. We have Shaurya. And I'm not going to introduce them because I'm going to let them do that themselves. And then we have Aarush. So, in addition to us 3 student panelists, can we please have another round of applause because they really are, taking out time. Then we have Shreya, Vineet, and we have Rahul, who Vineet spoke about. He's our study abroad expert on Europe. And so if any of you have questions about non-US, he's your guy. So with that, and now I'm going to hand over to Vineet really, who's going to be moderating the panel and asking us to kind of asking the panelists questions, and then we're going to open the floor to all of you. And
I am going to UD Austin for BA Economics, and I've been with Jamboree for about a year now. I was there for the SAT prep course, and then I was enrolled in their undergraduate admissions program. Prepping for the SAT, the verbal section was a bit hard for me, but the teacher I had at my center were very helpful. They gave me mock tests, and even though I asked, I wouldn't say dumb, but kind of dumb questions, they were pretty informative and they were very supportive of any kind of doubts that I had, and I could call them up anytime. Then even my maths teacher, they took all my doubts. Then for my undergraduate admissions, I was mostly looking at popular courses, but my counselor also helped me shortlist universities which were not very popular but were really what I was looking for, but I did not know what I was looking for. So they shortlisted all my universities. We went over the shortlist at least 2-3 times because I was pretty indecisive, and all the essays, we brainstormed the ideas. My editor was very helpful. I could call her up anytime, I could message her, and she really helped me transform my essays from the basic ones to really good ones.
Okay. Anyway, all the best. UT Austin is a great school.
Thank you.
And it's not an easy school to get into because Texas schools take very few students from outside Texas. So, and UT Austin is pretty much so great work there. Texas schools also give a lot of scholarships later on. Okay, should we have Kshitij going next?
Yeah, I'm audible. Yeah. Hello everyone, I'm Kshitij and I did my class 12th from Mittal International School. I scored 98% in class 12th and I took a gap year to pursue my foreign education because I wanted to be clear where I want to head, and I tried applying in a lot of places. I tried in the US, I tried in the UK, and I tried at Singapore as well, and I got accepted at National University of Singapore. And Jamboree helped me a lot with this entire procedure, especially Neelam ma'am, who was my admissions counselor. She used to, be very helpful, take my calls at any moment of the day. And the essays were very well edited by Anushri ma'am. She helped me a lot as well. It was actually some editing which taught me as well, I'll be very honest with that. And other things about the SAT, the maths faculty was very, very good. And even though my SAT score did not really, play a big role in NUS, I still got a 1420, and I scored 790 in maths, basically. So the verbal part was very troublesome. And that would be all from my side.
So you've chosen the National University of Singapore over many other admissions you have in the US.
Yeah.
Any thought behind that?
See, I believe in the word brand a lot, and I got accepted at a lot of places in US as well. One of them being Michigan State University, and not only I got accepted, I got a $30,000 scholarship as well. But I still chose NUS over that because NUS and Howard. These two names just take me wherever I am from. So that's the reason I chose NUS.
Well, great choice. NUS is perhaps I think the top ranked university in Asia now.
Yep, you're right. It's number one in Asia.
So great choice, Kshitij, and all the best. Okay, then we have Aarush. Aarush, you would like to introduce yourself?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Aarush. First of all, big thank you to the Jamboree team for inviting me here. So, I'm in 12th grade right now, and I'm currently studying in Venkateshwar International School, Sector 10, Dwarka. I took the most recent SAT exam, that is, I took the SAT in May, that is the last month, and I scored 1530 in that. So, I took the SAT classes provided by Jamboree, and I started my SAT prep in the month of March, and since it was a wonderful experience. Since the beginning, I had aimed for a good score, that is a score above 1500, and I was helped by the Jamboree faculty to achieve that, and I'm really thankful to them for that. And it has been a very supportive and wonderful experience since the beginning. So thank you for that.
So you said you started preparing in March and you wrote in May?
Right.
Okay, so that's a pretty short 2 months.
Right.
Any secret sauce you want to give?
Look, so I was familiar with most of the mathematical concepts, although there were a few concepts which were new to me. But verbal is the section where I had to work a lot. I had to give a lot of time to the verbal section. The verbal faculty was very helpful. He was the go-to person at any time of the day. I mean, if I had any doubt, I would just message him or call him, and he would be very prompt in his response. So you just need to put in a lot of efforts, and I don't think a month or 2 months is. You need more than 2 months to prepare for SAT.
Where are you planning to head to now? Where do you want to apply?
Right. So I'll be applying for engineering in computer science. That will be my undergraduate degree. So I'll be applying to top universities in the US, which would include MIT and other Ivy Leagues like Stanford, Harvard, and I'll be also applying to some of the state universities like Georgia Tech and University of Texas, University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, and some other private universities like Carnegie Mellon. So that's my aim for now.
Thank you, Aarush, and all the best for your admissions. Rahul, can I also invite you. Maybe you can. We didn't have a formal presentation, but you've studied in Italy, and you really went on a full scholarship. You've been part of the Jamboree team. So 3-4 minutes, you want to just talk broadly on Europe and the value that a European education brings.
So as I've already introduced, I'm Rahul, and I was in your seat, I think, a couple of years ago in 2016 when I was preparing for IIT, but I was also thinking about what other options do I have. And coming from a background, I knew US is something that I do not want to go for. So the options I explored were Europe, and I applied to 5 to 6 universities, and I was able to fetch some scholarship in some universities, but then I was also invited to admission test at a university in Italy. So I went on to Italy to write this admission test, and then I was ranked among top 10 students who were writing admission tests that year. And that was the beginning of the journey of getting full scholarship and starting my bachelor's in mechanical engineering, and then going to Shanghai for a double degree and backing scholarship for that as well. I think this is something that a lot of Indian students are not aware of, right? We, when think about studying abroad, we always think that it's going to be expensive. So a lot of students don't even look at the option of studying abroad for bachelor's because it's a 3-year or 4-year degree. So the number of years increase, the number of expense increase, the amount of living cost increase. But when it comes to Europe and public universities, which are ranked at the top across the world, there are a number of state funding that universities provide. At the same time, there are also living cost scholarships. So there is a possibility that you can study at one of the top universities of the world at completely free of cost. Right? Now this option exists, but this option is also a little more complicated. So you have to read more about it, you have to research more about the process, how to do it, and you have to prepare for it pretty much in advance. So this is something that I think you need help with, and definitely at Jamboree I had the Europe division. So I help my students apply to universities in Italy, Netherlands. Germany has come across as one of the top destinations for Indian students in the last 10 years because Germany has a right to education. Right to education extended to international students means that they do not have to pay any tuition fee, just like any other European student. So when there is no tuition fee, the amount of tuition fee cost is already removed from this studying abroad cost. So what remains is the living cost, which is also something which students' quality of life varies with. So as I think the conclusion is that there are more options than US, UK, Canada, Australia, and at Jamboree we have opened doors to those options as well. We have catered to a number of students recently who have gotten into top universities, top 50, top 30 universities on full scholarships as well. So if you are thinking that might be the right choice for you, and if you are applying to US, UK, Canada, and you still also want to explore options in Europe, so we can create a mix of these universities and apply to them. And believe me that we are not compromising with the ranking of universities. We are not compromising with the quality of education because Europe obviously is, well, it's the Western country. Like the education started from Europe. Some of the oldest universities in the world, of the Western world, are from countries like Italy and Germany. So we are not compromising with anything. We are just providing more options to you when it comes to Europe. So I think that's all. If you have more questions, I'll be happy to answer specific questions and even do counseling for specific profiles if you're interested. Thanks.
Thanks, Rahul. So Jamboree does have a 60 people admissions counseling team spread over the country, and we have experts on Europe, on US, of course. We've been doing since ages, but also UK, Canada, Singapore. So I think with that, we'll open up the floor for questions. You can just raise your hand. We have 2 people here, Satish and Rajiv. They'll bring the mic to you, and you can direct your question to anybody on the panel, including the students or Naima, myself, Shreya. Maybe Satish can be on this side. Rajiv, you can be. Okay, go ahead.
Hello. Audible?
Yes, please. You are.
Okay. So first of all, I have this question. I am planning to get an undergrad degree in political science. Which country would you recommend best for it?
Okay, Naima, you want to take that?
Yeah, I can take that. So I think that's a very interesting question actually, because it depends on what political science you want to study, right? Like if you want to learn about Indian politics,
International affairs.
right, okay, international affairs, then so as someone who is going through the US education system, one of my biggest complaint perhaps was that the curriculum, particularly in the social sciences and the humanities, tends to be very US centric. So you have to sometimes you have to make a very conscious effort to pick classes that, like for example, when you're doing international affairs, so my sister who's also at Yale right now, she took this global affairs class, and she dropped out of it after 2 weeks because she thought that they were seeing every country from only a US lens, right? So but it also depends on who's teaching it. So there's a lot of international faculty members. There's something known as area studies. Area studies means, for example, you could have African studies, South Asian studies, which would be India, Pakistan, Bangladesh. You could have Europe. I mean, I don't think they have. I think there's European studies as well, but Latin American studies. So basically, there's a lot of area studies also. So if you want to know about a region in particular, that's very you can do that really well in the US, I think. So one thing about the US is that they have just such a expansive curriculum that you can probably find a class on anything that you want.
What are the universities like? What do they guarantee accommodation and
in the US? It depends. It really is university specific. So I think most colleges guarantee dorm housing for the first year. So all first year students are guaranteed a spot in the dorms. But depending on how much space the university has, you might not be able to live in the dorms second year onwards. So, but in terms of housing options, there are a lot of options. So these are usually student towns, so there are a lot of apartment complexes that cater specifically to the student population, and you can, like sign up with friends and stay off campus, and like it's really close by. Mostly, you can get a cycle if it's a bit far away to go to classes and things like that. But I think housing, accommodation shouldn't really be a challenge, because if they don't give you dorm housing, there's usually a lot of off-campus housing around.
A lot of students tend to move off campus in year 3, 4 because cheaper, and they also find.
Yeah, I moved off campus in my 3rd year. So at least for us, we had to stay in the dorms for the first 2 years.
Was it compulsory?
Yeah. I mean, some colleges also make it compulsory to live in the dorms for the first year. And it makes sense, because you're coming to a new place, you don't really know anybody, you don't have friends. Living in the dorms, it's a social space, right? It's also a safe space, as in like you get to meet people who are in the, other first year students, etc. So I think it's nice to live in the dorms in your first year. I wouldn't tell anybody not to do it. But moving off campus is nice too.
Should we just take, this is your last question or you have many?
Actually, I have many.
Okay, so I'll just take a show of hands, and if nobody else has, then we'll come back to you. Okay, but we will answer all your questions. Maybe we can go right in the center, Rajiv, family here. And you could be in this aisle and maybe Satish can be in this aisle. Yes, ma'am?
Okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
I wanted to ask if it is possible to get any course related to sustainability without taking biology in high school.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think environmental studies, sustainability is a big topic. You can actually go for an undergrad in biology without taking a biology course. Okay, so
actually, this is what I wanted to say. Like when Vineet was giving the slide about, what kind of study things you can do. To be honest, you can basically study anything. It doesn't matter what you took in 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. You can start from scratch. All that means is you will have to put in more effort. Let's say if you've already done calculus in school, of course engineering will be easier. But they're not going to stop you from doing engineering if you haven't done calculus, is the point. You'll still have to learn it, but you can go there and learn it.
So, hi. I have 2 questions, and fortunately, two of the people that I have to ask those questions are here. One is for the Europe education, and the other is the Texas system of education. Because why Europe? Because part of my family settled in Netherlands is easy for me. So I'm looking at Prague, Groningen, Amsterdam, things like this, because we have a support system. Because she already has a bronchitis, a medical condition, which doesn't need very much monitoring, but something needs to be there. The other one is Texas system, because
Go ahead, sir, with the question.
first of all, it's with the institutes. How do we get them for Texas system? And of course, secondly, because its climate is good. So these are the two areas.
So your question on Texas is really around institution,
right.
and your question on Europe is
On Netherlands is it should we go for it right now? That seems low hanging fruit.
okay. I'll let Rahul answer Netherlands. I'll answer the Texas piece. So Texas is probably one of the few states in the US. The other one I think is Louisiana, where after you've studied for 2 years, after you've lived in Texas for 2 years, you are in state, right? So effectively, third year, most people are becoming in state, right? Also, even if you get a $500, $1,000 scholarship in year one, they make you in state. And I think for the benefit of others, there is out of state tuition and in state tuition. Out of state tuition in the US for most colleges is almost twice or 3 times than in state. So if you get on in state tuition, you're almost 1/3. Now, having said that, the problem with Texas is they also tend to be very limited in the number of seats they offer for undergraduate. They're far more liberal in postgraduate. UT Austin, I think, where Shaurya has got in, is highly selective. It's a top university, and it's already in Texas, so they take very few people. So I think that's the point to note. But otherwise, I'm a big fan of Texas colleges, and largely because of the support they provide to international students.
Maybe Shaurya, you want to add a little bit to that about why you're deciding to go to UT Austin and what seems appealing about it?
When I was researching for colleges, like shortlisting the universities, I was obviously looking at all the extracurriculars and the communities that they have. And there was this one organization that really stood out to me. It was about bridging Texas. It's about the old age people meeting young orphans. I've never really thought about doing something like that, or even in general, and the idea just seemed so appealing that it just made me feel really good about the college. And then the added benefit was that the courses offered were really nice and the professors were really research based. So that was why I chose to apply. And the college prompts were really different from what the other colleges had. So that was one of the main reasons why.
I think college prompts can tell you a lot about the college. I think definitely.
I would like to add something in that, because even I was admitted to UT Dallas, University of Texas Dallas. So basically their fees for international students, including everything, accommodation, tuition fees, reached around 58,000 USD. And I got the academic excellence scholarship there. It was worth $3,000 US. And as soon as I got that, they gave me a fee waiver, and my fees was down to straight to $28,000 US. So yes, that's a fact.
I think that's what I was mentioning. So if they get any student whom they consider meritorious, even a $2,000 award gets you in state tuition. Rahul, you want to talk about Netherlands?
So when we talk about Europe, actually, and UG in Europe, a small portion of countries offers options which are taught in English, medium of instruction in English. And Netherlands is actually one of those countries where we have public universities offering these courses. Some of these top universities are University of Amsterdam, Rotterdam School of Management, TU Eindhoven, Delft University. And these are the universities which rank in top 20 across the world. Right, so we are not talking about European rankings, we're talking about rankings across the world. Netherlands definitely comes with some benefits. It's a great place to study management. It's also a great place to study IT, right? And then obviously if you go into other sub-subjects like even political science we were talking about. So these are research-based universities and technical universities. There is a classification when it comes to European universities. So if you are looking for technical programs like engineering, you should be preferring universities like TU Eindhoven, right, or TU Delft. And if you're looking for options in sciences or natural sciences, then you should be looking for applied sciences universities, right? So there is a classification, and this is something which you will get to know once you talk to an expert who has some knowledge around Europe.
Well, the University of Amsterdam or Groningen are very broad-based in the socials, and it's a great country to study in, for sure. So, if you have a preference to go there, you should definitely. It's very economical too. It's extremely economical.
Right. So these are obviously 400 to 500-year-old universities. So they have departments and everything. You can study medicine, law, engineering, management, etc. Also, after Brexit, I think a lot of focus has come down to cities like Amsterdam, like Milan, and Berlin. So these have become financial centers after Brexit, and London is losing a little bit of its importance, but then they're putting efforts to make sure that they stay in place as well. So there are several benefits to study in Netherlands, and it's also an English-speaking country. You will see that around 50% of the population speaks English outside university. Obviously, inside university, a lot of people speak English. So I do see Netherlands as a good destination to study UG program, as much at pace with US, UK, or any other top country.
Thanks, Rahul. I think somebody else had questions. Can you raise your hands? Satish, maybe at the back, we can take one question at the back.
Yeah, I wanted to ask a question that how important do you think the school clubs are in CV buildings?
How important are school clubs in
CV building.
CV building? Should we have one of our students take that? Okay. Yeah.
So school clubs are extremely important, I feel. I was the head boy of my school myself, okay, and it played a huge role in extracurriculars, of course. Then when there are certain events in your school, like each school has its special event, every year we host this event, that event. If you're a host of it, you get a certificate for it. Then there are clubs, then if you take part in their events, you get a certificate for it. If you win something, they send you further to competitions. That adds to your extracurricular. When you go to competitions, then you obviously even increase your networking, you talk to new people, you get different perspectives. And I would suggest one specific thing to someone who might be interested in pol science. You should take up you should take up MUNs seriously, and get delegations, and it will help a lot in CV building.
Thank you. You want to add to this, Shaurya?
So my school didn't actually have a lot of clubs, and I was the COVID batch, so I did not really have the chance to become a head girl or a vice head girl. So I would say I would second the MAN option, because I had done some MANs myself and I had helped organize the MANs, and it certainly played a big role, because I think most of my extracurriculars were around writing and public speaking, so it added on that fact. So yeah.
Just to add to that, I think school clubs, like Shaurya said, it was COVID year. So, and this is something that I'm hearing from a lot of my students, that some clubs have, like the number of clubs in schools has dramatically reduced. A lot of schools have stopped sports, especially smaller schools. So, I just want to say that your extracurriculars don't necessarily have to be limited to school activities. Right, so you could be doing extracurriculars completely unrelated to school, and it's also sometimes there'll be this tendency that if you want to go to the US, then maybe you should do this. The point is, as long as you're doing something and you're doing it well, it doesn't really matter what you're doing. So, for example, I was not head girl, I was not vice head girl, I was not school prefect, I was nothing, and it was quite unusual actually, because my school, from my school, Yale has taken a lot of students, but the only students they had ever taken had been either head boy or head girl. So I was the first student to go who wasn't a head girl or a head girl. And the point I'm trying to make is that there is no set formula. Right? That you have to do what works for you. Not everybody is cut out to be head girl. Not everybody wants to be. Right? Not everybody will. You might like to do something, like you might be, a lone wolf and you don't want to be part of school teams and clubs. You can do your own thing. That's fine. So I think it's a broad canvas, and don't feel pressure to do something just because you think that's the right thing to do. There has to be some internal motivation to do it as well. That's the only way you'll be able to do it well.
the one thing I'd like to add is that again, while you can showcase your extracurriculars through school clubs or outside school clubs, really doesn't matter. But what I have seen over the last 25 years is having significant depth in one or two activities versus trying to do 10 or 12. I would encourage, if you are doing extracurriculars, particularly 10th, 11th, building a depth in 1 or 2 or 3 activities is better than trying to do 10, right? And it could be inside school or outside. Some people find it within and some outside, right?
I would like to add another thing as well. Another thing is community service, helping other people. That adds as well. That is very important as well. Like if you get satisfaction helping other people, that adds to your profile as well. Because in US they see this as something big. They see that, oh, this person has helped someone. Even though initially I was against the fact that I'll get a certificate for serving someone by my heart, but it's fine.
So that I would totally. You are not making it to a top US school or a decent US school without community service. They're big on community service.
And this kind of, just to return to the point, it's also, they're constantly looking at how you can contribute to their society. And society is multiple, right? So by society here, I mean the college community. That's what they're looking at. And yes, community service is important, it's good. But also, be careful not to do it just as a check mark, because they can tell, right? So if like suddenly in like middle of 12th grade you start joining an NGO and you're suddenly very passionate about it, it might seem a little bit odd, right? Of course it can still happen, I'm not saying that, people constantly develop interest, but I think being genuine is really important. And I think admissions counselors, they read so many applications, they can sniff people out. They can sniff it out if you're not being sincere or honest. Fields that require a lot of, for example, medicine. If you want to do pre-med, then maybe you do want to be concerned with course. But I think another thing to keep in mind is that look at the broader university culture. So for example, some schools are very CS focused, right? And now if you don't want to do CS, I wouldn't really recommend going there, because it's just going to be an overwhelming kind of tech culture. So I think a lot of universities have a niche. Maybe they're better at one subject than another, but I would say that most American colleges offer a solid education across disciplines, right? So unless you have something very particular, worry more about the college than about the course.
I think the only, Naima's answered it quite well. The only exception I'll make is to probably computer science. Fortunately or unfortunately, a lot of applicants from around the world are applying in computer science in the US. And there, if you are keen, you want to do computer science. And it is becoming more and more difficult to get into computer science in US colleges. They are starting to limit seats in many US universities, which was not the case earlier. So in that particular discipline, if you are clear you want to do computer science, then you just have to stick with the discipline, right? And not bother so much about the university. But for everything else, pretty much pre-med is another option. But I think for everything else, colleges, the quality of the college really becomes more important.
But I'll just say that only if you're really sure about CS, right? Because I know so many people who come in as CS majors. After the first semester, they're no longer CS majors, right? So to pick a college only for a subject is kind of a gamble. And just as Vineet was saying, not only are colleges restricting CS programs, they're making them harder and harder. So what they do is that they make introductory math and CS courses so difficult that people drop out. So instead of limiting the number of students, what they've started doing is make like a self-selecting pool. So at least like at Yale, there was a lot of criticism that why are you doing this? You just want students to not do CS, so you're making it tough on purpose. So I'd say unless you're sure there's nothing else for you, then pick course. Otherwise, pick college.
Okay, I think the question from the young lady was really around what are the best countries for medicine, right? So, one fact about the US on medicine is, in India, for example, after your grade 12, you immediately do MBBS, right? Your bachelor's in medicine. In the US, that's not the case. You do 4 years of pre-med, which could be any course in biology related course, and then you do 4 years of medicine, right? So it's effectively 8 years before you become a doctor, and then maybe you do another specialization. So effectively, you're looking at 10 years. So medicine, while US is a very, very attractive destination for doctors and lawyers are perhaps the best paid there. It's very respected, but it's a long haul, right? The UK is like India, so you can start your medicine immediately after class 12. You need to write the UCAT exam. It's a special exam for UK. So these, I would think, and then there are many other countries now for medicine, right? We recently saw in the Ukraine, I was surprised to note that there were 10,000 or 8 or 9,000 Indian students studying medicine in Ukraine, and they had to be shipped back. So many countries, Russia, China, many students going to China for medicine.
What about Australia, sir?
Australia also is a fairly good destination. Again, you can start your medicine degree right away. So all the Commonwealth countries, you can start pretty much, they all follow the UK system. So you can start medicine right away. Australia is a good option, UK is a good option, US is a great option, but then be prepared for a 10-year sort of haul. Does it answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. But if there's anything specific you're looking at, we're happy to. Okay, we have many, so we'll take 2-3 questions together. Maybe Satish, if you can pass her the mic, and can we also have Rajiv after that, this person in the red shirt. Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, what is the weightage given to sports performance against academic grades during the admission?
What's the weightage to sports
performance?
Okay.
Against academic grades.
Against academics, okay. Okay, what's your question?
What are the best streams and colleges you recommend in business studies in the US?
Colleges for business studies, okay. In the US,
streams and colleges.
Streams and colleges both, okay. Okay, there was some question at the back. Okay, maybe Satish, can you go back?
Okay, I am Arjun, and I'll be applying to the US for my undergrad in computer science. So, I really struggle to get a good score in the SAT. So, is there anything I can do, or is there anything I can do to get into good college if I do not get a good SAT score in my second attempt also?
Okay, we'll answer that. Okay, should we take one more? Maybe we can take one here. Yeah.
So are there any programs for AP preparations also in Jamboree?
Okay, AP prep. Okay, maybe let's start with these. Okay, sports performance. Who wants to take? Naima, you want to take that? Sports.
Yeah, I can take that. So I actually played basketball throughout high school. I started playing, I think, in 7th or 8th. But I think academic, it depends on how committed you are to the sport, right? So now if we're talking particularly about American universities, your sports is going to be a standout factor, as in it's only going to compensate for your academic performance if you're going to be playing varsity sports. By varsity sports, I mean if you're going to be playing on their college team. So like for example, if I were going to play on the varsity basketball team, then then they would overlook my academic performance. Sports recruitment in American universities works very differently. The coaches go out and they do all the recruitment, and then the grades don't really matter that much. But for most, if you're not going to be playing varsity sports, then your sports performance is not necessarily going to compensate for academic performance. What it will do is it will add to your profile. It will demonstrate a lot of other things. But it's not really a trade-off, as in like I have this and I don't have that, so it's okay. That I think that only works for like professional athletes from India at least, the one sport that gets a lot of recruits is squash. So I have a lot of squash friends, people who play squash from India.
And also shooting gets a lot of Indian students who are good at shooting make it to the university teams.
I don't play squash.
Okay. So if you play squash at a very high level in India, and you're very likely to make it to a US national team, and then it will really work for you.
Yeah, if you play squash and you play really well, that's something that could be a huge standout factor. I would say squash teams in the US, lot of Indian students.
Then your grades can be overlooked for sure. Okay, so that's a huge plus. Okay, so that's on sports. Colleges for business studies in the US, I mean, there's a really long list. Top of the list is University of Pennsylvania. It's the Wharton School of Business, the oldest school for business, but University of California, Berkeley, Michigan Ann Arbor, Purdue, New York University. It's just a very long list, and we can share details with you. You want to add?
I would just say one thing, and I mean, maybe I'm biased, but I tell every student who says that they want to do business studies, I really recommend that they consider economics instead. And the reason for that is economics as a curriculum is a lot deeper. It covers a lot of more things, and your options are wider. So even MBA schools, they would prefer economics majors than business studies majors, right? Because economics requires a lot of technical mastery, and you really have to get into the nitty-gritties. So if your end goal is business, I would say start with economics, as I think it's just a better curriculum across American colleges.
But to your specific questions, there is Indiana, Bloomington, there's a long list of colleges which are very good in business. Okay, now the next one was really, this really doesn't apply only to computer science, but to everyone. If you're not doing well on SAT, or if you think you're not scoring well, how else do you compensate, right? Who wants to take a shot at this? Kshitij, you want to start by, no? Okay, you can answer that. Okay, let's have Aarush.
So since you are applying for a specific course, that is engineering in computer science, I would suggest you that you build your profile or your CV around the computer science. Like, you can take up courses and learn the basics of coding languages like Python or C++. And if you have the opportunity to participate in coding competitions, like there is Google's Code Jam, and there are coding competitions by Microsoft as well. So participate in those. And also, if you are having tinkering or STEM school clubs in your school, so you should also participate in that. So since discussed earlier that it is the computer science field is very competitive in the US, so you need to be best at the field. Basically, you need to build your profile around computer science. So that's just what I wanted to say.
I think that's the perfect answer. I think nothing to add really. So, but for everyone else, if you're struggling on SAT, the way to compensate is really through your school marks. A lot of colleges are test optional. So if you have high school marks in 9th, 10th, the one thing I want students and parents to note, especially the people who are applying to the US, your 11th marks are perhaps more important than your 12th boards, okay? And your 12th mid-year and 11th marks are very important. Not just 10th, but 11th and 12th mid-year, because your admission in US is going to happen on that. For European colleges, UK, Canada, Singapore, your 12th boards are very important, because these colleges really admit you conditionally. They will give you a conditional admission based on your predicted scores and your 12th board marks. And only when you finally get your 12th marks that your admission is confirmed. But most American colleges, it's really 10th, 11th. 10th, I'm sure most of you have done, you can't do much. But if some of you are in 11th, please do well in your 11th finally. Students ignore 11th, and that's the reason I mentioned that. The one thing students do in India is they ignore 11th and 12th mid-year. Both of these are extremely important. Okay, the last is AP Prep. Jamboree is tied up with another coaching company for AP Prep. So we don't offer directly, but we have a very reliable partner whom we can guide you to. Satish can help, or where's Arun? Arun is around. Yeah, Arun is here. You can just meet him after the seminar, and we can guide you. There are also a lot of online resources. Khan Academy is a great resource for AP. We've covered these 4 questions. Any more hands for questions? Okay, we have many more. Okay, we have this young lady also who has a long list. Okay, let's go here let's go here and then yeah, go ahead, sir.
Hi Vineet and Naima and everybody. Thank you so much for the wonderful seminar. First of all, my question is more towards the exit end of the undergraduate program journey. So, Vineet, can you help us understand where these students actually land up after the undergraduate program? Because I am sure you must have a great alumni list. And so, how many percentage actually come back to India? How many stay back, go for postgrad or go for jobs? So, how is the scenario after these programs? That's my question number 1. Question number 2 is my son is still in class 10th, and you know that the last 2 years have been virtual and pandemic hit. So, what is the right time he should start preparing for SAT, etc.? Because I think these guys also need some time to recover and cover the last 2 years and get into the rhythm. So these are two questions.
Okay, we'll take some more and then we'll come. There's somebody here. Rajiv, this lady. Okay, go ahead.
Are there any design courses or fine arts courses in Ivy League colleges, and can we get 100% scholarship in Oxford University for fine arts or any other college?
Okay. Okay, there was one question. Okay. Go ahead.
Hello.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, like, in my class 11 grades were quite low. So can I make up that by making my profile more oriented around computer science? Will that make it up for that?
Right. You want to apply to the US?
Yeah.
You've written SAT also?
No, I will give it a number.
Okay. Okay, we'll answer that. Okay, and maybe I'll take one more. This is becoming a long list already. This lady here, the 3rd row, I think 4th row. Yeah.
I'll just say one thing to everybody asking questions. If your question is extremely specific and if you think you'll have a lot of follow-up questions, we're going to be here to answer them afterwards. So if you think you have a question that's going to be relevant to other people as well, go ahead. But if you think it's very specific to you, then maybe just hold on and we'll be here afterwards.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Yeah, hi, good evening. It has been a real insightful session for sure. I wanted to ask you that since now we are in the middle of June, right? And my son is in class 12th right now. So all I had wanted to ask was that I know the time is less in my hand, and what is the right time to open up the Common App? Because I've started filling it up, but I think it's still not updated. So it is still showing 2022 intakes. So what is the right time for me to, open it up and start filling it up and, of course the CV and of course everything else is getting, piled up side by side. And also the second thing that Naima shared, that what is the right time to run after the counselor? Because he's in DPS Vasant Kunj, and I have not been able to meet the school counselor yet. I haven't spoken to her even once, and since the holidays are on, so she's not in a mood to really talk and, meet. So, of course, as a parent, I will have to take that step forward. But then, what is the right time when, I should start, gearing up to this transcript and your predicted marks? I think, I just need to know those deadlines and those timelines.
Okay, I think we have a list already, so we'll go ahead. Naima, you want to start with this particular question, design and fine arts in Ivy League colleges or top end in the US? And
yes, definitely. So I don't know about Oxford, so maybe somebody else can answer that. But yes, Ivy League colleges in the US most certainly do have fine arts programs. In fact, Yale has the best art school in the US and the best drama school. So they take their arts very, very seriously. And talking about 100% scholarship, yeah. So as Vineet already mentioned, the Ivy Leagues are mostly need-based scholarships. So they will look at your family income and they will give you aid based on that. So they're not going to, your admission will not be based upon whether or not you can afford it, right? So you're going to be admitted based on merit, and your scholarship will be decided based on need, and that they will determine by family income, members in the household. It's a whole thing. So basically, yes.
So the US, I mean, Rahul, you want to add about Oxford?
Department.
Hello?
Sorry. So there are departments where you can even study design courses, and there are even more specific courses like product design or industrial design. You can choose a specialization. You have to choose between Oxford and Cambridge when it comes to that, when you apply for UG programs. So you have to choose one of those universities and make an application. When it comes to 100% scholarships, it's a gamble, I'll say. Students do land up with such big scholarships, if not 100%, let's say 75 to 80%. But merit-based scholarships are extremely rare. So as Naima already said, you have to look at how much you can afford and how much of the tuition fee is going to be something that you can't afford. So that will be making up most of your financial aid that you will receive. Right? So they will also provide you with other options. It's not only scholarships which are available. You can get loans, and there are also modern financing solutions which obviously are available at top universities like Oxford. And Oxford or Cambridge, these are like Ivy Leagues of UK, right? So they do offer scholarships generously. So you can easily accept, I'll say, 40 to 50% of scholarship, but more than that, you have to really show that you will be somebody who deserves that scholarship.
The right time will be right now, I feel, because you should start, see, essay writing is very important, I feel. And the personal essay, it has a huge role in your application being admitted. You have to script your story, how you were, how you are, or what kind of obstacles you face. Certainly, like, I'll just quote my story in a little, that in 7th class, I was not such a academically well student, and I scripted myself, I changed XYZ factors about how I used to be, and today I landed up with 98% in class 12 board. So it is my growth. That is how I grew into this individual. I had stage pride. I used to shiver when I used to be on stage and I became the head boy. That is growth as well. So that's very important. I feel scripting all this is even more important in your very own work. Yes, there will be an editor for you, but again, doing it yourself and the heart you have, the journey you know by your heart, that's the most important, I feel.
I think he's making an important point. Filling the Common App can be done later, but start writing the Common App prompt essay. That hasn't changed for many years, right? Yeah, it's remained the same.
The personal essay remains the same.
Just one thing, the prompts for the next year are already out, the Common App prompts, and I work a lot with essays, and I highly recommend using the summer to get started, because writing is a process, it's slow, right? So you want to write, then you want to let it be revisited after a couple of weeks. And also, if you're going to be applying to a lot of colleges, you'll also have supplemental essays, right? So after a point, it can really pile up. So you want to pace yourself. And as Kshitij already said, it requires self-reflection, right? So you're not going to suddenly just see the prompt and know what to write. You're going to have to think about it. So I think for everybody, read the prompts, even if you don't start writing, think about it in the background, talk about it with family and friends.
Yes, and the supplement essays are they might be college specific. They might ask you very specific things. So you have to be prepared for them even better, because they are specific, they will have equal importance as the personal essay.
Okay, Shaurya, you want to take this right time to write the SAT?
So I took the SAT kind of late. I took them in August of 2021.
August of your grade 12?
Yeah, August of my grade 12. So it was pretty late. So I think I should have preferred if I took the SAT before, because it would have just given me more experience.
Right.
Because I got a 1460 score, which is quite decent, but I feel like myself I could have done better. And Yeah, I would say start from 11th in the middle and give the SAT ones. Like the mock tests are good, but the real SATs are just different. Like no matter how much you try to, just recreate the whole environment, giving the actual SAT is definitely very different than giving a mock SAT in the same environment.
Shaurya, right time for SAT? Sorry, you've done it, Kshitij.
Right time for SAT? See, I'll be honest. The maths part, if you're decent at maths, you'll be able to pull it off. So the right time is right now for everybody. Okay, get started with the verbal part because it's gonna trouble you a lot. I'm being very honest. The verbal part, especially the reading passages, you feel, oh, we are a CBSE student. Reading passages are a piece of cake. No, these reading passages will absolutely blow your mind because you are from CBSE.
Okay.
Maybe
what about you, Aarush? You wrote the SAT.
So I took the SAT in the month of May, which is the last month, and I'm in my 12th grade right now. I would suggest taking the SAT in the later half of the 11th grade because by the end of the 11th grade, you are familiar with most of the mathematical concepts, and the verbal section is the only thing you have to work on. So, but also keep in mind that it should not affect your 11th grades, your 11th finals, because those are important too, right? So, just you need to plan your schedule accordingly. When you are ready, you should take SAT at that time.
So, Naima, you want to
based on this is my very personal, perhaps biased answer. I think the best time to take the SAT, particularly if you're a CBSE student, is after your 11th half yearlies, and especially if math isn't a concern. Also, like the math on the SAT, you don't really need 11th grade math for that because there's no calculus, there's no trigonometry, etc. Or maybe there's very little trigonometry. But the point is that you don't need 11th grade concepts to give the SAT. And the reason I say after the half yearlies is because, academic pressure is low, you can give dedicated time to preparing, and that gives you sufficient time to retake it if need be. Because remember, for anybody applying to the US, 12th grade is a very hectic time, right? So you want to get your testing out of the way, and you also want to not risk, you want to give yourself time to take it again if need be. So really, I would say after 11th half yearly.
And that's what Jamboree also recommends, right? The moment you finish 10th, start preparation. So by 11th mid-year, little later, 11th, you were done with SAT. But of course, the other answer is it's right now. A lot of people write it in 12th. Shaurya wrote it in 12th, so he's written 11th hand. So it varies from people to people. But if you can start immediately after 10th. In fact, in 10th we start doing some prep, so immediately after 10th is a good time in 11th. Okay, right time to run after counselors. Who wants to answer that?
See, who all amongst you have a good bond with your teachers? Just raise your hands. So, unless you have that, you don't really have to worry about the counselors. Okay? Because till the time you have a decent bond with your teachers and the school counselor, they will not trouble you that much, and plus they'll give you priority. Okay? They will help you out more. They might give personal inputs as well into the LORs, which are extremely important again. And the personal bond, the amount of respect you have, the amount of ruckus you create in your classroom is important as well here. Okay, so here your bond with teachers will play a huge role, I think.
I would just say that it really depends. My experience was not like that. It really depends on what school you go to and who's the counselor. I went to DPS Arkipuram, and most of you might know we have a huge student population. So the counselor had no time to give any preferential treatment, let alone any input on the application, right? So it's like there would be a 2-hour wait outside the counselor's room, and it's like you have to. So if you go to a big school and a lot of students apply abroad, start now. Like really pester the counselor. It's okay, because they have so many students. They're gonna forget. They have so much on their plate. They're not gonna always take it seriously. It's your application. You have to take it in your hands. So you keep trying to follow up with them. I would say for predicted grades, don't ask for predicted grades till the half yearlies are over. Because most teachers are going to give you predicted based on your half yearly, right? But for letter of recommendation, especially because even the teacher and the counselor needs a little bit of time to frame it, you can start doing that now. And some schools, and I would definitely recommend checking this, have internal deadlines, right? So for example, my sister, when she was applying new counselor, she said that if you want me to write you an LOR, I need you to fill out this form and give it to me before 30th October, right? So some counselors will set up their internal deadlines. Make sure you check what that is. But yeah, you might have to be a little bit aggressive or pushy with the counselors.
Shaurya, you had any experience running after counselors?
Yeah, so in my school there was a counselor, but it was quote unquote a counselor. No one really went to her, no one really talked to her, and in my school not a lot of people applied abroad. So she was pretty free all the time and she was quite unaware of the whole application process. So, but the people who went to her to get the letter of recommendation, she just got like a simple paragraph, like she just wrote it, like a character sketch which you get at the end of the 12th grade. She just wrote that and she sent it off to everyone. I listed everything that I've done, like the school activities, the personal things, my hobbies, and I made an Excel sheet and I gave it to her. So it really helped her. So she didn't actually give me like a simple based paragraph which she just wrote off to everyone, but she gave me a personalized one, and it made her job easy. So you know, if I did not like the letter of recommendation she earlier wrote, I would have to go again and then she would have to talk to me and then write it again. So instead I just kind of did the work for her, that I just pulled out everything that I did, the kind of person that I am, and I even made her read the letters of recommendation I had from my teachers. So she had a little bit of what I was as a student, because she and I had never interacted. So I would say that is something that's really helpful.
And that's a great answer. So I would encourage everyone to sort of provide your counselor teachers inputs, and it really differs from school to school, as you sort of heard. PPS Vasant Kunj, I think a lot of students apply, so probably going earlier would be my suggestion. Okay, 11th marks are low. Somebody had this question. So SAT I am about to write, applying in computer science. You know, I would go back to Aarush's answer, if you heard that. Who was this student who asked this question? Yeah. Did you hear Aarush's answer in computer science? How can you really shore up your profile? Or he could perhaps repeat it, right? If your 11th is low, he mentioned do coding, do projects. Aarush, you want to mention?
Sure. Yeah, so as I said earlier, you need to build your profile around computer science, like learn coding languages like Python, C++, or Java, and participate in coding competitions like Code Jam and other competitions organized by Microsoft and so on. And also participate in tinkering labs or STEM labs and other STEM activities, because this reflects your interest in this field, in this particular field, that is the computer science, and it would enhance your, I would say it would just boost your probability of getting an admit card from a good university for computer science. And also you can compensate your 11th grade marks by scoring high in the SATs. So if you're planning for the August attempt, I would suggest that you prepare well and you score good. That's what I would like to suggest.
Yeah, perfect. That's a perfect answer. So I'll take the last question, which you
just
had.
One more thing. Also, basically, if you want to recover, and this is for everybody who's trying to make up for perhaps poorer academic performance, and if you're in 12th, if you feel like your grades in 9th, 10th, and 11th have not been up to the mark and you want to compensate for that, you have two chances: the SAT and your half yearlies, right? So I would say put in a lot of effort and take it very seriously. For some of you who want to do even more, AP exams is an option, but I think APs are over for this year. But let's say those of you who are in 11th, you could consider APs. But point is, there is a way to make up. Like I said before, you were given multiple chances, right? They're asking you for 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, because it's okay if you didn't do well in one or two, right? You can make up for it. So take your SAT and your 12th half yearly very seriously.
Okay, I'm going to come to your question, which was really careers after your undergrad. And it really differs from country to country, but I'll try to cover as much as I can, and maybe Rahul can help me from a European perspective. So, in the US broadly, the first is that technology is really on fire.
And I will say it is a lot easier to find a job in the US. and a lot easier. I would say, I think the process of job hunting is feels less futile there. You hear back more often. People take you more seriously, your time more seriously, and I think that also, like, in terms of, like, there are just more jobs there. But for example, like, even outside tech, there's a lot of people going to media, print media, communication, marketing. Marketing is actually a huge thing, especially for, I know a lot of psychology majors who like to go into marketing. Then other than that, there's a lot of for those who are interested in working in the social sector, there are endless opportunities. So if you want to work in the social sector, you will find a job very easily in the US. There are amazing organizations doing really good work that pay really well, and they're looking for people who are who are socially conscientious, who want to give back. But so the thing is that non-profits nowadays, they want to hire the top talent, so they're giving competitive salaries, right? Because if you want the best people, you have to give the best salaries, and they believe that the only way that they can do good work is if they have the best people. So for them, financially, it makes sense. So I would say that irrespective of what your field is, you can find a job in the US. But I think it's also about personal decisions, right? For me, I personally do not want to settle there. I want to come back. So I will go back for my PhD. It will be 6 long years. But eventually, my plan is to come back. And I think a lot of people do that immediately after they stay abroad. But after a couple of years of perhaps working, doing things, they maybe come back to India.
And as a broad data point, my experience has been that everybody who wanted to settle and work in the US has managed to, at least for 3 years. Canada, virtually everyone finds a job eventually. UK has been a challenge traditionally. We found 60 to 70% students coming back. Now let's see how things are after Brexit. Mainland Europe, there have not been large numbers, but people are able to find a job. It's a slightly bigger struggle, but people are able to find a job. Eventually, Singapore, everybody finds a job. Australia, virtually also, I've seen most people find a job. So I hope that is wrong.
How long actually does a child need to prepare for SAT to make his chances brighter to get into a good university?
Right. Okay. So the child is already in 12th and still need. Okay, ma'am. So maybe let's start with that question. Shaurya, you wrote your SAT pretty much. You want to take that?
So I would say the time is pretty crunched because SAT is a big test and it adds to the stress because 12th is a very important class, obviously, and preparing for the SAT in itself is a big thing. So I would say start like now and start with like everyday practices and start with a mock test first. Like you can do 4 days of earlier prep, then give a weekend SAT, like just for yourself, and it actually gives you a punch in the gut because the first mock test is like really bad. I don't think I've met anyone who's got a really good score in the first attempt. So like give a mock test and then just start preparing every day. I'm not saying like give 4 hours or 5 hours because you have to study for exams as well. I would say just take 30 minutes out of the day, do passages. Like maths, I think a lot of people can handle because it's 9th and 10th maths, and writing too. Like it is American English and we're usually used to British English. So if you look at the basics, you can pretty much do the writing part too, but doing the reading passages is hard. So just do 1 or 2 passages every day and make a habit of, if you're not doing the questions, just reading the passages, because sometimes even reading the passages is very taxing, and a lot of people I know in the SAT who gave the SAT, they gave the first 3 passages really nicely, but at the end too, they just started feeling really tired. So yeah. You can do it on your own because there are a lot of sites like Khan Academy. It was a very helpful site, but for me the coaching helped a lot because they just made a straight plan and made me follow it. And if you're in 12th, I would say that take coaching because the time is also limited, and you also have 12th ka stress. So if you have someone guiding you for it, it would just really, help you get the best of it. And sometimes, like if I were doing it on myself, I know that sometimes I would prioritize my 12th studies. Like if I had an assignment the next day, I would not study for SAT the day before. But if I had a coaching, they would make me study for it, like the way I should have been doing myself.
People already mentioned, for most Indian students, the math is not that hard. It's easier to do. The verbal is where most students tend to struggle, right? So I think if let's say your child is a voracious reader, then less time, definitely. It wouldn't take that much time. I personally prepared in 1 month, but then I was giving all my attention to the SAT, right? So I think different people work differently. I am the kind of person who needs to do one thing at one time. So intense 1 month study worked for me, So I would say really, and also I want to say that I know I said that 11th is the best time, but I had friends who took the SAT as late as like November, right? After the 12th half yearlies. In fact, schools have this option where you can report your SAT late. So you can apply to colleges without having your SAT score. And you can maybe take it in Jan, and then the college board will report the SAT score to the colleges, and then they will factor it in. So you don't necessarily have to have an SAT score by 31st December, is the point.
Rahul, you want to take the Italy over?
When we say top universities are in Europe, definitely it's a myth, it's a popular opinion. And studying abroad has become a synonym of studying in USA because most of the companies which are coming forward in India, tech companies, they are focusing on US, UK. So the more you see it on social media or whatever the teenagers look at right now, it becomes that US is the only option. Whereas if you look at top 10 rankings, you will always find 1 or 2, 3 universities in Europe. AD at Zurich, where Einstein himself studied, makes it to the top 10 rankings. The one in Switzerland. When you go to top 20, you will see EPFL. You go to top 30, you will see more universities. Number of UK universities make it to top 50 in QS rankings. And you can definitely look at more credible rankings, Financial Times rankings for management programs. So I do not, obviously it's not a right fact that top universities are only in US. Now what are the differences? Definitely there are plenty of differences when it comes to US and Europe. And one of the major differences is quality of life. If you want to choose quality of life over the money you are going to earn after your graduation, then you have to choose Europe. It makes more sense. The kind of work culture, the kind of environment you live in. You don't see skyscrapers in Italy. Obviously, it's not allowed to build skyscrapers in Italy because Europe wants to stay the way it was, and it doesn't want to give up to the modern architecture, which is becoming extremely popular and not really great. If you look into it, the kind of skyscrapers that are coming up in Europe, in New York, etc. From a student's point of view, I will say there are two major differences. One is cost, obviously. So not everybody can afford studying in US, and scholarships are something that you can never guarantee. Nobody can guarantee you. We do not guarantee as well. When it comes to Europe, the tuition fee at public universities range from 0, and 0 is the right number, 0 to 2,500 euros most of the time. When we talk about countries like Italy, Germany, Poland, these are some countries, France, public universities. Okay, so the highest you're going to pay is going to be 2,500 euros, right? And definitely this number is around 60 or 50 times higher when it comes to US, the maximum amount of tuition fee that you're going to pay. The living cost obviously also decreases. Even in cities like Paris and Milan, you can't really compare that living cost to the city like New York. So it definitely decreases. So the complete cost of attendance, which is tuition and living, decreases substantially when it comes to Europe. And again, we are not compromising on the ranking of the universities because you can choose to go to top 50 universities. Obviously, you have lesser options. You have to have a profile for that. So that's one major difference. Another major difference that I can talk about is experience. When you study in Europe, they encourage you to study in more than one country, right? So there are plenty of exchange opportunities which are also called Erasmus options. When I studied my bachelor's in Italy, I was encouraged to go to China for a second degree. So I went to Shanghai and that was also fully funded. So when I graduated and when I was around 21, 22 year old, I had learned Italian, I was speaking Mandarin, I had 2 languages on my resume, and I have lived in 2 different countries in the last 4 years. So the amount of exposure that you get there, and I had the option to go to US, which I did not choose because there is not much value I found in it. Very honestly, it's very personal choice that I made, but I'm not sure these kinds of opportunities will be forced on you, or these kinds of options you will get when you go to US or UK. Also, if you are somebody who really wants to be in US, the good option is to go for bachelor's in Europe, because bachelor's is a longer degree. It's a 3-year or 4-year degree. So when you study in US, even if 1 year cost of attendance is going to be 25-30 lakhs, when you multiply it by 4, it goes above 1 crore rupees. But when you look at Europe, right, so the cost is very less. If you're studying a 3-year degree, it's still going to cost you around 25 to 30 lakh rupees, right? So you can do your bachelor's in Europe and go for master's in US, and that's an option. I did my bachelor's in Italy, and then I applied to even colleges like Columbia University, and I got into them very easily. Yeah. Because if you study at a top university,
I told you Rahul is going to convince you. Yeah. So Rahul, I'll have to interrupt you.
That's most of it.
Shreya, you want to take a couple of shots on SAT prep, because you're really the SAT expert. I should have told you in earlier.
So
a lot of people saying 2 months, 1 month, verbal section especially.
Yes, so I do find that a lot of CBSE board students especially struggle a lot with the reading passages specifically. The writing still, you can do it because it's more or less about logic. Once you know the rules, once you know how to apply them, it's pretty easy. But it's the reading part that takes the effort. It needs constant practice. You have to devote time to it. So really, like, I would agree with, I think it was Kshitij who said, start preparing right now, right? Especially for the reading section. Rest can be taken care of, but regular practicing every day, not, once a week or twice a week. It's better to practice every day. So, the right time to start would be to start right away, as soon as possible. And to focus more towards the reading section as compared to the math and the writing. Obviously, you need to spend your fair share of time on them, but then it would be the reading part that you would need more effort towards.
Biosciences is a huge discipline, and let her explore. It's a very vast discipline. I'm not a biologist, so I can't answer in detail, but I do know that every university is focusing big time on the biosciences. So she'll have lots of career opportunities. Now, on the second one, you mentioned your son doesn't like physics and chemistry but wants to do CS. So US has computer engineering and it has computer science, right? Computer science doesn't require physics and chemistry. Even if he's done math, he can do computer science. And even during the 4-year degree, you can just get away, unless you want to do computer engineering in specific. You will require physics, but computer science per se doesn't require that you've done physics and chemistry. I hope that sort of, it's going to be more around software, programming, logic, but you can just get away with math.
I'll just add to that. For the CS part, to be honest, you don't even need math, right? And it's like, because when you're applying, and I remember you guys said US colleges, right? So actually you can apply, let's say, for history, and you can go there and decide you want to do CS, right? So nobody's checking what you've done. It's just that when you reach the class, how much do you already know? But if you're really keen to do CS, you can start. You don't need math to begin with, very honestly, for computer science. I've taken a lot of introductory CS classes. I didn't use any of my math there, right? And as far as the bio thing goes, again, you can, it's okay if you haven't done math already. You can go and you can take intro calculus, and that should be enough for you, even if you haven't done it in 11th and 12th, if you want to continue with that. But basically, you can study anything you want. There's neuroscience, which is really developing and upcoming. And, I think Vineet already said it, but US colleges have so many different majors and in the sciences as well. So it's not just biology. Like within biology, they have like MB, MCB, I don't know, but basically a lot of different things which are not necessarily medicine, Does that make sense? Or even anthropology actually as a field, could be very interesting.
This whole domain of biosciences is huge, and you don't need to necessarily do biology and become a doctor. As a discipline itself, it's just huge, and it's getting bigger by the day. So I think we've tried to answer most questions. We are 7:15. We had to close at 7, so I'm afraid we have to close the session. But most of us are around, so if you have questions, you can come to us. The Jamboree team members are. Arun is here. Arun heads all of the Delhi region for us. Arun, can you raise your hand? Satish is here. They're all very trained to answer questions. Who else is here from the Jamboree team? Nikita is outside, and Rajiv is here. And of course, I'm here, Naima is here, Rahul is here, Shreya is here. The students, of course, we will not request them to stay longer, but if they wish to, they can be here. But thank you so much. You were a very, very interactive audience, and I'll just take one.
I have a quick announcement. I think all of you must have been given a feedback form. If you could please take 2 minutes and fill it out and hand it in on your way out, it would really, really help us. It is because of your feedback that we can customize what we're saying, and it's not easy to come up here and speak for any of us. So if you give us feedback, it will really help us. And then also, if you guys decide to register or sign up with Jamboree today, there is a 10% discount for on-spot enrollment. Thank you.